My name is Mia Holloway. I'm 31 years old. The morning the DNA envelope changed my life, I was sitting in my Honda Civic outside a low brick testing office wedged between a dialysis clinic and a dentist with faded blue letters peeling off the window. Rain had passed maybe an hour earlier. The parking lot still smelled like wet asphalt, motor oil, and old leaves mashed into the curb. Across the street, a pharmacy sign buzzed over a tired strip mall. A loose shopping cart kept knocking against a light pole every time the wind shoved it. The white envelope was sitting on my passenger seat like it had no business mattering. Too light, too plain, too clean. I had picked it up on my lunch break because my OB's office wanted to confirm a blood compatibility question after a miscarriage 3 months earlier. That was the official reason. A follow-up. A genetics check. One more medical errand in a year already clogged with bleach smell, discharge papers, co-pays, and soft voices that somehow made hard things feel even lonelier. I kept staring at my last name printed across the front. Holloway. The name on my school forms, my apartment lease, my FAFSA, my tax returns, my driver's license. The name stitched across my varsity jacket, the name engraved on the silver bracelet my mother gave me at graduation, the name on the hospital band when I lost a pregnancy almost nobody in my family even knew about. I turned the envelope over twice before opening it. Then I slid one finger under the seal. The paper made that dry little sound official things make: small, precise, final. Inside were 2 pages, clean, clinical, organized. The kind of pages that don't look cruel until you read them closely. I scanned the header first. Lab codes, patient number, date. Then the relationship section. Maternal relationship. Confirmed. Then the next line. Paternal relationship. Excluded. I read it once, then again, then slower, as if maybe the words would rearrange themselves out of mercy. Excluded. Not unlikely, not inconclusive, not pending, excluded. Outside, tires hissed over the road. A FedEx truck rolled past the pharmacy. Somewhere farther off, a siren rose and fell. My hand stayed on the paper, but something inside me shifted sideways, like my whole life had been mounted on a wall, and somebody had just knocked it half an inch off center. My father was not my biological father. There are moments when life doesn't explode. It tilts. That was one of them. I didn't cry. Crying would have been easier. Instead, I just sat there with the pages trembling between my fingers while memories started moving underneath me like floorboards pulling loose. Every time I'd asked why I didn't look like my dad, every joke about me getting my dark eyes from some mysterious ancestor, every weird hesitation around blood types, every school project about family medical history where my mother answered the paternal side too fast. Every holiday where certain relatives went careful around me and then left early. Every argument when I asked why there were almost no photos of mom pregnant with me. Every tiny thing that had never made sense on its own. When I was 9, I asked my father why I had dimples, and he didn't. He laughed and tapped my chin. "You got the good genes, kid." When I was 14, a nurse at urgent care asked my blood type and my mother answered before I could open my mouth. When I was 16, I needed a passport for a choir trip to Toronto, and my parents fought in the kitchen over my birth certificate, in those low, tight voices adults use when they think walls are loyalty oaths. I stood in the hallway by the laundry room, smelling Tide and dust and spaghetti sauce, and caught only pieces. "Just use the copy." "That copy looks altered." "She doesn't need the long form." At 19, when I had to replace my social security card after my purse got stolen at a Starbucks near campus, my dad insisted on taking me himself. He waited through the line, through the fluorescent lights, through a crying toddler, through a man arguing at window 4. He never let me hold the folder with my documents. At the time, I thought it was love. Love can look a lot like supervision when you're raised inside it. I called my mother first. I still don't know why. Maybe because some part of me believed there had to be a safe explanation. A clerical error. Swapped samples. Bad data. Maybe because if you spend your whole life trusting somebody, your first instinct is still to hand them the knife and ask why it hurts. She picked up on the second ring. Hi, honey. I'm running into Walmart. Can I call you back? My mouth felt dry. No, I need to ask you something now. She paused. I could hear carts rattling, a register beeping, voices moving past her. What happened? I got the DNA results. Nothing. Just 1 second of store noise and silence inside it. Then she said too quickly, from the pregnancy screening? Yes. And? That one word landed wrong. Too flat. Too ready. I looked at the page again. It says Dad isn't my biological father. There was a little sound like she shifted the phone to the other ear. Then her voice dropped lower. Mia, do not say that in a parking lot. My fingers tightened around the paper. Why not? Because those tests are complicated. This one isn't. Mia, is it true? I heard a cartwheel rattle. A child whining. Somebody laughing too loudly nearby. Then my mother said the sentence that split the day open wider than the lab report had. We should talk at home. Not no. Not what are you talking about? Not that's impossible. We should talk at home. A person can lose a family in 6 words. Everything in me went cold. Not outside, inside. At the kind of cold that starts in bone. Mom. Honey, not like this. Is it true? I said we should talk at home. Then she hung up. I sat there with the phone still against my ear, listening to empty air. Then I called my father. He answered in that clipped voice he used when he was working. Hey kid, in a meeting. Are you my biological father? Silence. No papers shuffling. No annoyed exhale. No confusion. Just silence so exact it felt older than the call. Then he said, Where are you? Answer me. Where are you, Mia? At the testing office. All right, stay there. I'm coming. Then he ended the call. That told me more than any explanation could have. If it had been absurd, he would have said absurd. If it had been impossible, he would have said impossible. If it had been a lab mistake, again he would have said lab mistake. Instead, he was coming. I drove home before he got there, not because I was brave, because I was scared of seeing his face before I understood the size of the lie. My apartment was 22 minutes away, 3rd floor of a beige complex with HOA warnings taped beside the mailboxes and one dead crepe myrtle tree nobody ever replaced. I don't remember most of the drive. Just one red light, one ambulance, and the smell of old coffee in the cup holder. Inside my apartment, I locked the door, dropped my keys on the counter, and spread the DNA pages flat beside a Trader Joe's receipt and an unopened electric bill. Then I called in sick. Then I dragged the fireproof lockbox out of my bedroom closet. Passport, social security card, vaccine records, lease, old tax forms. But the documents my mother had always been strangely eager to help me organize. I laid everything across my kitchen table under that weak gray afternoon light and started looking at my life like it belonged to evidence, not memory. My birth certificate was a certified copy issued when I was 12. I knew that because I had used it for school and college paperwork. What I had never noticed was the notation in the lower left corner. Amended, tiny print, quiet as a whisper, violent as hell. I searched my email for old attachments, insurance forms, pediatric records, college immunization papers. My listed address before age 5 was different in 2 places during the same year. One said River Glen Apartments, another said Willow Creek Townhomes. That should not happen. I called my cousin Tessa, she's 28, say a nurse in Dayton, blunt enough to be useful and soft enough to be trusted. We grew up together through every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every humid 4th of July barbecue with Dollar General sparklers and burned hot dogs, and one uncle always too drunk by sunset. She answered on FaceTime from her car in navy scrubs. Hey, I've got 10 minutes before I go back in. You okay? I almost said yes. Habit is hard to kill. Instead, I held the paper up to the screen. She squinted. What am I looking at? My father is excluded. Her face changed. Not confusion, not shock first. Recognition. That was the second betrayal of the day. You knew something, I said. Tessa looked down, then out through her windshield. I knew there was family weirdness. That is not an answer. I was told not to say anything. By who? She closed her eyes for 1 second. My mom, years ago. She said there had been messy circumstances when you were born and it wasn't my place. My throat tightened, but not with tears, with anger, clean anger. What messy circumstances? I don't know the whole story. You're lying. I'm not. Her voice sharpened. I know your Aunt Carol and your mom didn't speak for almost a year when you were little. I know your grandmother used to say, "Stop punishing the child for adult shame," and your dad would leave the room. I know there was a man nobody was supposed to mention. That's what I know. A man nobody was supposed to mention. The sentence just sat there, heavy, ugly, useful. Tessa. Yeah? Did they say he was dead? She swallowed. They said he was dangerous. There it was, the shadow figure. Every family has one if you wait long enough. The cousin no one invites, the uncle who did something. The woman nobody names, but everyone lowers their voice around. In my family, there had always been a man on the edge of stories, somebody from before, somebody my mother had survived. Nobody ever used his name near me. Bad news, bad blood. Thank God that's over. I used to think it was about my mother. Now I started wondering if it had always been about me. Do you know his name? Tessa hesitated. Then she said, maybe Daniel. Maybe, not even certainty, just enough to crack the whole foundation. That night my parents came to my apartment together. And I knew before they knocked, because my mother texted me, "Open the door, please. No heart emoji, no honey, no sweetness laid over control. Just please." I let them in, and I did not hug either of them. My mother was wearing jeans, a cream sweater, and the face she used for funerals and prayer chains. My father still had on his work jacket from the HVAC company, damp at the shoulders from drizzle, jaw set so hard it looked painful. I had already placed the DNA report on the kitchen table between us. Nobody sat down. My mother spoke first. "This is private." I almost laughed. It stopped being private when I found out my life was fake. Dad lifted his chin. "Watch your tone." And there it was. The old reflex woke up in my body right on cue. The child reflex, the obedient one. At the one trained to flinch first and process later. I didn't step back. "Were you ever going to tell me?" My mother pressed her lips together. "We wanted to protect you." "From what?" "From pain." I stared at her. "You think this is the painless version?" Dad stepped closer to the table and planted both palms on the wood. "I raised you. I paid for everything. I was there for every fever, every recital, every breakup. Biology isn't fatherhood." "That is not what I asked." He looked away first. Mom tried again. "The man who fathered you was not safe." "What man?" She looked at Dad. That glance told me who had controlled the story all along. I said, "Name him." Dad answered instead, "There is nothing good waiting for you in this." That line hit me hard because of how careful it was. Not "there's nothing true." Nothing good. Meaning there was definitely something. "Who is he?" Mom's eyes filled, but by then I no longer trusted tears just because they were wet. It was a bad time in my life. I leaned back against the counter because I suddenly needed something solid behind me. "Was it an affair?" "No." "Were you assaulted?" Her mouth opened, closed. Dad snapped, "Do not ask your mother questions like that? I'm asking because one answer makes you victims and the other makes you liars. Mom whispered, I made a mistake. People use that word when they want a whole architecture of harm to fit inside something the size of a dropped plate. A mistake is using salt instead of sugar. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. A mistake is not 31 years of silence. This was a design. So who is he? I asked again. Mom said, Bussa Daniel Mercer. The name landed with no face attached, no memory, no photo, no story, just a name pulled out of a grave they had kept covered. Is he dead? No, she said. Dad cut in. He may as well be. I turned to him. Why? He signed away any right to you. How old was I? Mom whispered. A baby. Why? Neither answered. I held up the amended birth certificate. Why is this reissued? Dad's jaw clenched. Mom said, There were corrections. What corrections? Names, dates, administrative things. Administrative things. Apparently, my whole life had been built out of paperwork and euphemism. I asked them 3 more times for the full story. Every answer came back smaller than the question. He was unstable, it was complicated. We did what was necessary, he couldn't provide. You were safer with us. Yeah, with us. As if truth and safety could never live in the same house. When they left, my father paused by the door and said, Do not go looking for him. I looked straight at him. You don't get to tell me what not to look for anymore. His face changed then. Not grief, not regret, fear. I noticed because it was the first honest thing either of them had shown me all night. After they left, I stood in my kitchen while the fridge hummed and my upstairs neighbor dragged furniture for reasons known only to God. Rain tapped the window over the sink. My phone lit up twice with texts from my mother. Please don't do this tonight. We love you. Love without truth is a leash. The line came to me whole. I wrote it on the back of a gas receipt before I forgot it. The next morning I took PTO and went to the county clerk's office. But if you have never gone looking for your own life inside a government building, let me tell you what it feels like. It feels insulting. It feels like standing under fluorescent lights while a printer jams. Someone argues over property taxes, and a woman with a pink stroller bounces her baby with one foot while you wait to find out who you actually are. At the records window, I requested my birth filing history. The clerk, a woman with bifocals on a chain and a candy dish labeled, Please take one, asked for ID and a notarized request if I wanted archived amendment information. There was a notary public office 2 doors down beside a tax preparer and a closed vape shop. I walked there in drizzle, signed papers at a laminate desk with fake ivy taped to the wall, paid $20, and came back with a stamped form. By noon I had a reference number and a retrieval slip. County Clerk, case number 2024-17823. The archived record would take 3 to 5 business days. So I used those days. I requested my hospital birth file from St. Anne's. I ordered an official long-form certificate. I searched yearbooks, Facebook, old county property records, and ancestry message boards for Daniel Mercer. Too many results at first. Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. But one stood out because my mother had lived in Franklin County for exactly 1 year before marrying my father, and a Daniel Mercer had rented an apartment 2 miles from her old address. Then I called Aunt Carol. My mother's older sister had always been the family problem because she refused to keep things polished. She smoked into her 60s, cussed during football, and once told a deacon's wife exactly what she thought of performative prayer chains in the church parking lot. My parents called her unstable. That usually meant honest. She answered on the 4th ring. What? It's Mia. A pause, then softer. Honey, I closed my eyes. Why does everybody sound guilty when I say my name today? Because some questions arrive late and still find everybody waiting. Carol didn't dodge. What did you find? My dad is not my biological father. She let out this long, slow breath like she had been holding that sentence inside her chest for decades. No, he isn't. Hearing it from somebody else made the room tilt all over again. Xiao, you knew. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because your parents would have cut me out of your life. They cut you out anyway. Not completely. I sat down because my knees had started feeling unreliable. Who is Daniel Mercer? Long silence. Then Carol said, Your father. I swallowed. My biological father. Yes. Was he dangerous? No. No hesitation. No soft landing. No family fog. Just no. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Carol kept going. He was young, broke, stubborn. Your mother was 21 and scared. Their relationship ended badly, but not the way you were told. He wanted to be in your life. I shut my eyes tighter. Then why wasn't he? Because your mother met Richard. Richard, my dad, the man I had called dad since I could speak. Carol continued. Richard had a stable job. I came from a church family, wanted a clean start, and did not want a husband-shaped stain in the picture. Your mother wanted out of the apartment, out of the mess, out of being judged. She wanted a normal story. Daniel threatened that. My voice came out sharp. So they erased him? They tried. Did he sign me away? No. I opened my eyes. What? No, she said again. He signed temporary guardianship while he was in rehab after a workplace injury and a pain pill addiction. Temporary, Mia. 6 months. He thought he was getting stable so he could come back and fight for shared custody. Instead, your mother married Richard, moved counties, amended paperwork, and started telling people Daniel disappeared. The blood rushed in my ears so loudly, I almost missed the next words. He fought, Carol said. Thus for a while. I stared at the stove clock. 3:14 p.m. Just another Wednesday. My whole life being dismantled minute by minute. Did he ever try to see me? Yes. How many times? I don't know exact numbers. More than once. More than 10. He sent letters, gifts some years, a photograph on your 8th birthday. Your mother burned one letter in my sink while I screamed at her not to. I pushed back from the table so hard my chair scraped. That image hit somewhere nearly unbearable. A letter burning in a kitchen sink while I was 8 years old. Probably in my room doing homework, watching cartoons, combing a doll's hair. A man writing to his daughter. A woman setting the page on fire. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Carol gave a rough, bitter laugh. Because you finally asked the kind of question nobody can gaslight. DNA doesn't care about church stories. I wrote that line down too. By Friday, the archive packet was ready. Gray folder, red stamp, thin stack. Inside were amendment forms, a petition notice, and one page that made me sit back down in the hard plastic chair by the records desk because my legs stopped belonging to me. Original birth filing. Father listed as Daniel Mercer. Amended 12 months later. Father changed to Richard Holloway. I checked the page 3 times. There it was. Written, filed, stamped, changed. A clerk asked if I was finished with the pen, and I handed it back without speaking. In my car, I photographed everything and emailed it to a new folder I created called Truth Timeline. Then I opened a spreadsheet, date of birth. Original filing. Guardianship. Marriage license date. Amendment date. Address changes. Protective order filing. Dismissal. School enrollment. It was messy at first. Then it got clean. Method is mercy when grief gets too big. I learned things about myself in those days. I learned I am eerily calm when the world deserves a scream. I learned I can live on coffee, protein bars, and spite longer than anyone should. I learned betrayal gets easier to handle once you force it into case numbers and signatures. The hospital records came next. My mother's delivery chart listed Daniel Mercer as emergency contact until 2 days after my birth. Then somebody crossed it out and wrote Richard Holloway in darker ink. Crossed it out. Like a father could be edited with a pen, the long-form certificate confirmed the amendment trail. Then the probate clue came by accident. I was searching Mercer in county records when I found an old probate case from 14 years earlier. Mercer, Eleanor G. Asset Transfer Pending Heir Location Issue. The addendum was sealed, but the public summary referenced issue of predeceased son's lineal descendant. My stomach flipped. If Daniel's mother had died and heir language referenced a lineal descendant, then somebody knew I existed in writing. Legally, formally. Maybe more than one somebody. I took the case number to a lawyer. Her name was Denise Kerr. Mid-50s, sharp bob, charcoal suit, office beside a bakery that made the whole lobby smell like cinnamon and espresso. I paid for 1 hour and spread every document across her conference table. She read in silence. When she finished, she folded her hands and said, "You are not dealing with a family misunderstanding. You may be dealing with fraud, misrepresentation in identity-related records, and historical interference with parental rights. Some claims may be too old, some may not, but your leverage is real." Leverage? It felt strange in my mouth. Useful, too. Was my certificate changed illegally? Possibly under court-supported amendment, she said. That does not always mean honestly obtained. The questions are what was represented, what Daniel Mercer was told, what he signed, and whether later filings were false. Can I get the sealed probate addendum? Maybe, not quickly. But first, she tapped the original birth filing with Daniel's name on it. Do you want the truth quietly, or do you want consequences? I looked at the page, then at my hands, then back at her. Now, I want the truth first. Consequences second. In that order. She nodded once. Good. Anger is expensive when it moves before the paperwork is ready. That became my operating principle. I didn't confront my parents again. Not yet. I let them think I was stunned. I answered my mother with short texts. Busy. Need space. Not ready. I ignored my father's 2 voicemails about family loyalty and adults doing what was necessary to protect children. I went to work at the dental supply company. I paid rent. I took out trash. I renewed my license at the DMV and stood in that line looking at bored employees and residency posters and a teenage couple fighting over utility bills, thinking how absurd it was that the state demanded more honesty for a license renewal than my parents had used to rewrite my life. Lauren became my safe place. As she knew about the miscarriage, she knew about the DNA report. Most importantly, she did not tell me to forgive. That made her rare. One night over Thai takeout at her condo, she asked, "What do you want most?" I said, a version of my childhood that wasn't curated by people terrified of being judged. She set down her fork. Then stop asking them for it. Ask the records. Ask the people they cut off. Ask the person they buried. The person they buried. 3 days later, I found him. Not directly, through an obituary. Daniel Mercer had died 6 years earlier in Louisville. My biological father was already gone. The blow did not hit cleanly. It hit sideways. Through my neck first, then my chest, then my stomach. I was sitting at my desk at work when I found it. Somebody near shipping was laughing about March Madness, and the copier jammed twice. My screen glowed with a stranger's life and my own name inside it. He was 49. He worked in cabinet restoration. He loved old blues records, river fishing, and Louisville basketball. He was survived by a sister, Naomi Mercer, and a daughter, Mia, whom he loved from a distance all his life. I had to put my face in my hands. Loved from a distance all his life. Not because he abandoned me, because he was kept there. There are sentences that arrive too late and still manage to raise the dead in you. I went home early and sat on my bathroom floor with the obituary open on my phone while the shower dripped behind me. I didn't sob. It was worse. I folded inward in small, silent waves, like my body was trying to make room for a grief it had never prepared a room for. A father I never knew had died knowing my name. A father I had been taught to picture as danger had left behind public proof of love. The next morning I called Naomi. She answered cautiously. "Hello? My name is Mia Holloway," I said, then stopped. "I think I'm Daniel Mercer's daughter." Nothing. Then a sharp inhale, then crying, immediate, not loud, just real. "Oh my God," she said. "Oh my God." I had to brace myself against the kitchen counter. "You knew about me. I have been waiting for this call for years." Waiting. That nearly undid me. Naomi lived in Louisville in a narrow brick house with a yellow door and 2 ferns on the porch. I drove there that Saturday with a tote bag full of copies, a phone charger, and enough fear to power a city block. The interstate smelled like gas stations and rain. And I passed Buc-ee's billboards, a Cracker Barrel, 2 churches advertising Easter plays, and every version of America that pretends history can be outrun by driving harder. Naomi opened the door before I knocked. She had my eyes. That was the first thing. My exact dark eyes in a stranger's face. I stopped breathing for one beat. She was in her 50s, thin, silver streak at one temple, no makeup, hands shaking around a dish towel she obviously wasn't using. Behind her, the house smelled like coffee, lemon cleaner, and old wood. "Oh, honey," she whispered. I didn't know whether to hug her. She solved it by hugging me first. Inside, she showed me 3 boxes. One had letters Daniel had written and never sent after the last court warning. One had file copies, one had photographs. In the first photo I ever saw of my biological father, he was sitting on the hood of an old truck in work boots and a white t-shirt, smiling down at a baby in his arms. Me. I knew it was me because Naomi pointed out the blanket, a faded yellow one she still had folded in tissue paper. The date written on the back was 2 weeks after I was born. He looked nothing like the monster I had been protected from. He looked young, worn out, a little wrecked around the edges, tender. "You were his whole world," Naomi said. I stared at the photo until everything blurred. "Then why didn't he come get me?" Her face tightened with pain, not defensiveness. "He tried the ways he knew how. He filed. He begged. He got ugly sometimes. He got clean. He got worse. He got clean again. Your mother and Richard had more money, more respectability, more support, and a better lawyer. Daniel had a pill history, bad timing, and no one respectable backing him." Respectable. That word had ruled my whole childhood. Respectable meant church on time, pressed shirts, trim lawns, casseroles after funerals. No public mess. Apparently, it also meant rewriting a child's parentage and calling it protection. Naomi handed me a copy of an old visitation petition. Attached was an affidavit from my mother saying she feared for her safety and the infant's well-being because of Daniel's erratic behavior, substance dependency concerns, and emotional instability. Then came another page, a note from a caseworker recommending supervised visitation after treatment completion. He completed treatment. There was proof in the next folder. And then a letter from Richard's attorney pushed for dismissal based on continuity and the child's established attachment to the acting father. Acting father. There it was in legal ink. Not father, acting father. A role made permanent by paperwork, money, pressure, and time. Naomi looked at me carefully. "There's something else." I looked up. "Your grandmother Eleanor left money in trust for you. Not huge money, but enough. It got tied up because your mother contested notification. Richard claimed Daniel had relinquished rights, and there was no beneficial relationship to preserve." I let out this hard little laugh. "So money got in there too." "Maybe not at the beginning," she said quietly. "Later? Yes, pride too, shame, image. Those are expensive addictions. Then she showed me the thing that broke me open. A stack of birthday cards, ages 6 through 12, some mailed and returned, some never sent. One of them, for my 8th birthday, had a photo tucked inside. Me at a school field day, far away, tiny in the frame. He had found a way to see me, not close enough to touch, close enough to know. I sat on Naomi's couch and cried then, finally, bent forward, shoulders shaking, one hand over my eyes while she stayed beside me and didn't rush me into language. Grief is love with nowhere agreed to go. I wrote that down later, too. When I came home, I stopped seeing my past as random weirdness. I started seeing it as design. The move to a different school district after some vague zoning issue. My mother's overreaction when I once mentioned maybe interning in Louisville during college. By the Christmas my father snapped at Aunt Carol for giving me my grandmother's locket because not everything needs to be dug up. The way my baby album started around 7 months. The reunions I wasn't allowed to attend because those people are chaotic. The envelope from Louisville I found at 17 that Mom snatched out of my hands so fast she tore the corner. All of it made sense now, not in the harmless way, in the horrifying way. My parents hadn't just lied once. They had curated an emotional environment where I would never even know which questions to ask. That is a deeper kind of control. By then, Denise had enough to move. She filed for sealed probate relevance review and historical record access. She sent a preservation letter to my parents regarding documents tied to my amendments. She requested notice materials from older family court filings, and she warned me not to post, not to threaten, not to turn pain into theater before the paper trail was ready. So I stayed calm. Calm became my weapon. My mother invited me to Easter dinner. I went. Not because I wanted ham and fake peace, because I wanted to look at both of them across a table while knowing more than they thought I knew. The house smelled like rosemary, furniture polish, and the vanilla candle my mother lit whenever guests came over. Plastic eggs sat in a glass bowl on the coffee table because my cousin's kids were coming later. My father carved ham at the counter like the world had not shifted 1 inch. Mom kissed my cheek and said, "I'm glad you came." I said, "You should be." She froze for half a beat. But we sat at the same dining table where I had done homework, signed my college acceptance letter, and cried through one stupid breakup, while my father told me boys weren't worth losing sleep over. The same table where people had prayed, passed roles, lied, and expected me never to separate those actions. During dinner, my mother kept watching me. My father did not. That told me he was more afraid. Finally, Mom said, "We can still get through this as a family." I set down my fork. "Which family?" The silverware made a small, sharp sound in her hand. Dad said, "Don't do this at Easter." "You did it at my birth." He stood so fast the chair legs hit hardwood. "I am your father." I looked at him and said, "You are the man who took that title." He went white around the mouth. My mother whispered, "Mia." "No," I said. "Ma, not yet." Then I left before dessert. The next week, the last important document arrived. A hearing summary. Daniel Mercer had appeared by phone from treatment. My mother testified that contact would destabilize the household and confuse the child. Richard testified he had assumed the full paternal role and intended to adopt if permitted. Daniel requested time to complete treatment and establish employment. Then came the handwritten notation months later. Petitioner failed to appear after notice issue. Case administratively closed. Notice issue. Denise circled it. "That," she said, tapping the words, "may mean he did not receive proper notice. If we prove interference, their moral problem gets harder to bury." Moral problem. Still such polite language for what they'd done. Then Aunt Carol gave me the last human piece. That we met at Bob Evans off the interstate because she said family secrets always sound more manageable beside laminated menus and bottomless coffee. The place smelled like syrup, fry oil, and old carpet. She slid into the booth wearing a raincoat and looking like she had smoked sadness straight through her pores. "I remembered something after your call," she said. "What?" "Your mother wasn't just scared of Daniel. She was scared Richard would leave if the truth stayed messy." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Richard came with conditions. No ex, no custody drama, no addict father in the picture, no church scandal, no reminder you were made before him. He offered stability, but only if the old life got buried." My stomach turned. So she chose him. Carol held my eyes. Yeah, she chose him over and over. That was the whole moral inversion in one sentence. Not a woman protecting her child from danger, a woman protecting her future from inconvenience. Later that month, Denise called. The probate review gave us enough. My grandmother, Eleanor Mercer, had attempted to designate a trust for me and include a family explanation letter. My mother, through counsel, objected to contact disclosure and claimed no beneficial relationship existed. The trust was eventually rerouted after delay. Money had changed hands. My existence had been argued as an administrative inconvenience. I sat in my car outside work after that call and laughed until I almost cried. All those years my parents had trained me to feel dramatic for asking basic questions, disloyal, ungrateful. Meanwhile, they had spent decades managing not only my identity, but the legal and financial consequences of their lie. That was the moment I stopped thinking about confrontation. It became presentation. I chose the setting carefully. My father's mother, Ruth Holloway, was declining with congestive heart failure. A family meeting was scheduled at St. Luke's to discuss hospice, power of attorney, and house issues because the will was outdated. My parents would be there. Aunt Carol, too. Two uncles, the pastor, possibly the estate attorney. Image, authority, inheritance, medicine, family power, every pillar they had ever hidden behind. Perfect. Denise told me not to improperly disrupt legal proceedings, so I didn't. I prepared folders, one for each person, front page a timeline, then copies, original birth filing, amendment record, guardianship, hearing note, Daniel's petition, hospital contact record, probate reference, obituary line naming me, a notarized statement from Naomi, a printed still of Daniel holding me as a baby. Proof does not need volume if it has sequence. I wore a navy blouse, black slacks, and the silver bracelet engraved with Holloway. That mattered to me. I wanted to walk in carrying the name they used to control me and decide for myself what it meant. The conference room at St. Luke's smelled like hand sanitizer, coffee from somewhere down the hall, and that faint plastic smell vinyl chairs always have. Rain streaked the narrow windows. A muted local news broadcast rolled across the TV in the corner with captions no one was reading. My grandmother slept upstairs in ICU. Down here, yet everyone was trying to look composed. My father stood near the window talking to the estate attorney. My mother sat with a tissue in her hand she didn't need yet. Aunt Carol saw me first and said nothing. Just met my eyes. Then gave the smallest nod. That was enough. The pastor started with prayer. I let him finish. The attorney began outlining property questions, house sale timing, and probate issues if Ruth passed without revisions. My father slid into business mode instantly. Calm, responsible, confident, competent son. I watched him and thought about all the years he had acted fatherhood into permanence until even he believed the performance should be rewarded. Then the attorney mentioned lineal heirs and family clarity. I opened my tote bag. "Before we continue," I said, and every head turned. "Yes, there is a family clarity issue that should be addressed before anyone here pretends paperwork has only ever mattered when convenient." My mother's face drained. My father went still. The attorney frowned. "Mia?" I stood and handed him the first folder, then one to Aunt Carol, then my uncles, then the pastor, then my mother, then my father last. His hand didn't move, so I set it in front of him. "What is this?" my mother asked. I said, "The version of my life you never intended me to have." No one spoke while the pages turned. The attorney read fast. The pastor read slower. My younger uncle got to the original filing and said, "What the hell is this?" My father finally opened his. He reached the amendment record, and his jaw locked. My mother whispered, "Mia, not here." I looked at her. "Well, you built it everywhere." The attorney cleared his throat. "Richard, Elaine, are these records authentic?" My father said, "This is a private family matter." The attorney answered him, "Not if lineal status, prior probate behavior, or identity records affect legal representation." That was the first crack. My mother started crying then. Real tears, maybe. Strategic tears, maybe. I did not care. She turned toward the pastor. "We were trying to protect her," I said. "From a father who wrote birthday cards you hid? From a grandmother who left money you fought? From hearing her own name spoken honestly?" My father stood. "Mia, enough." I stayed seated. That difference mattered more than volume ever could. "No," I said. "You used temporary guardianship to turn yourself into a permanent fiction. You changed records. Wes, you blocked contact. You fed me a story about danger because shame was easier for you than truth. Then when DNA exposed it, you lied again." My uncle turned to my father. "Rich, is any of that wrong?" Silence. My father looked around the room, the way men do when authority leaves them so fast, they still think if they stand still enough, it might come back. "It was complicated," he said. There it was again. The family sedative. I leaned forward. "Say his name." He didn't. So I did. "Daniel Mercer was my father. He tried to stay in my life. You helped erase him." My mother covered her mouth. The pastor looked stunned, then sad in that deep, quiet way religious men do when sin stops looking dramatic and starts looking administrative. The attorney closed the folder and said nothing, which was louder than anything. But my father tried one last move. "He was an addict," I answered, "and you were a fraud." The sentence landed. Not because I shouted it, because I didn't. Calm is devastating when the lie depends on you sounding hysterical. He pointed at the papers. "I raised you." "Yes," I said. "You raised me inside a controlled narrative designed to keep me grateful for what you stole." My mother whispered, "We loved you." I looked at her, and something inside me finally settled. "I believe you loved me. I also believe you chose yourselves over me for 31 years. Both can be true. That is what makes this unforgivable." After that, nobody defended them. That was the real shift. Not screaming, not spectacle. Withdrawal. My uncle took off his glasses and rubbed his face. As the pastor asked whether legal counsel had been involved at the time. The attorney said he would need to review implications before advising on any estate language tied to heirs or representations. Aunt Carol just sat there with tears running down her face and one hand resting on the folder like she was blessing a grave. My father looked at me with something close to hate then. Good. Not because I wanted hatred. Because hatred was more honest than the father mask. He said, "What do you want from us?" For years I thought the answer would be apology, or confession, or one full clean telling of the truth from start to finish. But sitting there with hospital coffee in the air and rain on the windows and my own history spread across fake wood, I realized I wanted something simpler and harder. "Yes, I want you to stop controlling the narrative," I said. "Starting now, no more family version, no more protecting me, no more church version, no more tragic simplifications. If anyone asks, the truth is the truth. Daniel Mercer was my father. You interfered. You lied. You changed records. You erased him. And I will not carry your shame as if it belongs to me." That was the line after which my life stopped belonging to their edits. My mother broke then in a way I actually believed. She bent over crying into both hands and said, "I was so scared." I did not comfort her. Fear explains, it does not absolve. My father did not cry. He said, "You're destroying this family." I looked around the room. No, I'm introducing it. Nobody had anything useful to say after that. The meeting unraveled in slow motion. But chairs shifted, folders closed. My uncle followed the attorney into the hallway. The pastor stayed back with my mother. My father walked out without taking his folder. Aunt Carol squeezed my shoulder as she passed and whispered, "About time." I stayed alone for 1 minute after everyone left. Just 1 minute. I looked at the stack of evidence, at my own hands resting on it, and understood something I wish I had learned much younger. Silence is not peace when one person is required to disappear inside it. My grandmother died 12 days later. I went to the funeral, not for performance. For her. She had loved me in those ordinary grandmother ways that ask for nothing. Dollar bills in birthday cards, peppermints in coat pockets, as cheap gas station earrings because they looked like you. Sitting through school concerts, no child should be expected to remember. I don't know exactly how much she knew or when she knew it. I only know that when I was maybe 10, I once heard her tell my mother from the hallway, "A lie does not turn holy just because you keep it in a Christian home." I understand that sentence now. At the visitation, people whispered. Of course they did. Families like mine survive on whispers until documents arrive. My father stayed near the casket. My mother looked 20 years older in 3 weeks. Naomi sent flowers with a card that said only, "For Mia, with love." I carried that card in my purse for months. After the funeral, my father called and asked to meet. Not at home. And at a diner off Route 40 where truckers stop and the pie display always looks too hopeful. I almost said no, then I went. The place smelled like bacon grease, coffee, bleach, and rain-soaked coats. He was already in a booth when I came in, hat on the table, hands clasped tight enough to show he was trying not to let them shake. For the first time in my life, he looked smaller than the role he had played. I sat down. He said, "I never meant to hurt you." "I know." He looked surprised. I added, "You just meant to keep what you wanted." He stared down at the sugar caddy. After a long silence, he said, "Your mother would have left him anyway. But you made sure she never had to face what that cost." His eyes came up slowly. "I loved you." There it was again. The thing that made the story harder, not easier, because he did. But in the ways he knew how. He taught me to drive in the Sears parking lot when I was 15. He ran beside my bike with one hand on the seat until I found my balance. He stayed up with me through pneumonia. He transferred money into my checking account in college when I was short and acted like it was nothing. He sat through my terrible production of Our Town and cried harder than my mother did. He was not pretending every moment. But love is not innocence. A person can love you and still build their happiness on your silence. I said, "You do not get absolution from me because some of it was real." He flinched like I had slapped him. Maybe I had. He asked, "What happens now?" The waitress set down coffee I hadn't ordered yet. Outside, rain moved over the parking lot in silver sheets. Somewhere in the back, dishes crashed and somebody swore. I thought about it carefully. Now I correct what I can. I meet the people you cut off. I decide what name I keep. I grieve a father I never got. And I stop showing up to relationships where truth is optional. He nodded once. Then very quietly he asked, "Are you still my daughter?" That was the child question, not the controlling one, the almost human one. It nearly undid me. I looked at him for a long time before I answered. "I am no longer your story," I said. "What I am to you after that is your burden to define." He cried then, softly, with his face turned away. I let him. I did not reach across the table. Some distances become sacred once they are finally earned. Over the next year, I changed more than paperwork. I petitioned for annotations where I could, and I corrected what could be corrected and documented what could not. I reopened enough of the Mercer Trust issue to force disclosure of prior contest behavior, though not enough to recover everything that should have been mine. By then, money mattered less than acknowledgement. I met more of Daniel's side. A cousin who restored guitars, an elderly neighbor who remembered him teaching me to wave with my whole fist when I was a baby, a former co-worker who said, "He carried your picture in his wallet until it fell apart." Naomi gave me his old blues records. I don't even like all of them, but I keep them because grief is strange and objects become bridges. I also stopped spending Thanksgiving at my mother's curated table. That first year I went to Louisville instead. We ate turkey, boxed stuffing, pecan pie, and one failed green bean casserole Naomi swore tasted better than it looked. After dinner, she brought out a shoebox of photos and one tiny hospital bracelet with my birth date on it. We passed things hand to hand like evidence and inheritance had finally been allowed in the same room. At Christmas, my mother texted me a photo of the tree from my childhood home. I did not answer right away, not out of cruelty, out of choice. That difference matters. Eventually, I wrote back, "I hope you're telling the truth now, even when it humiliates you." She replied, "I am trying. Trying is not redemption, but it is a direction." Sometimes people ask me now, after they hear the softened version, whether I wish I had never taken the test. No, not once. The DNA report did not ruin my life, it ended a performance. And it stopped me from spending the rest of my years inside a script written by frightened, controlling people who mistook management for love. It gave grief a name. It gave absence a face. It gave me the right to reinterpret every wound with correct lighting. There is pain in learning you were shaped by concealment. There is also power, because once you see the machinery, you stop blaming yourself for the damage it caused. My last name is still legally Holloway, at least for now. Maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't. I don't think identity lives in a line on a form anymore. I think it lives in what you refuse to keep carrying. Some nights I still sit in my car after work with the engine off and listen to the metal ticking under the hood as it cools. The air coming through the cracked window smells like gasoline, cut grass, ice or summer rain depending on the season. People walk dogs, grocery bags rustle. Somewhere a child laughs from a balcony. Life keeps moving in all the ordinary American ways it always did, but I do not feel ordinary inside it anymore. I feel authored. That is the victory, not destroying them, not humiliating them for applause, not forcing some giant public spectacle so strangers can pick sides. The victory is quieter than that, cleaner too. I know who my father was. I know what was done to me. I know which grief is mine and which shame belongs to someone else. And I will never again confuse being managed with being loved.